Hi guys, today we're going to look at how to build a dynamic dashboard using slicer and timeline functions in Excel. So here I have built up a couple of tables and graphs, and down here I have my slicers and my timeline. So here, for example, if I just want to see 2024 data, do like that, and everything will change. And I can also filter on region. So I'll just look at the South region and everything will adapt and filter out what's for 2024 and the South region. And then I could choose brand. Now it only shows Samsung top 5 models and the margin for Samsung during 2024 in the southern region. If I instead take Apple here, it will filter out what top models are sold for iPhone. And still, it's the southern region and 2024. If I instead want to see the eastern region, I could see it's a bit different. Margin 6.9 and the southern has 4.4. So the iPhones are selling much better in the eastern region. But this is a very good way to click around and get a good grip on your economy or whatever you want to look at. So how do we then build this kind of slicers that affects all the different graphs and tables? That's what we're going to look at now. As you can see in my Excel file, I have two more sheets. First, I have the data sheet, and here are all the data. It's basically 3,000 rows where all the sales of different phones in different regions, the quantity, the total revenue, and which date it was sold. And all that data I have then done some calculations on in pivot tables. The whole dashboard is actually built from pivot tables, and that's why you can make it dynamic. So here you can see I have one pivot table, another pivot table, a third pivot table, and then here I have my slicers. So the slicer will work on all the pivot tables that I would like to have, and then of course it affects the graphs as well. Now I want to show how I started to build up those pivot tables, and by doing that I think we should start with a clean sheet. So let's go to the data table again, and then I just put somewhere in here and insert pivot table, and I will do it on a new worksheet. So here is a clean worksheet, and then we could try to reproduce one of the first tables that I had. And then I, from here, choose year and quarters, and then we take the quantity. Then I would like to change a bit because I don't like this way of looking. So I go to pivot table design, and here in the report layout, I will choose show in tabular form. Then it will look much better when I'm going to do a graph on this one. And then I could take the whole pivot table, just copy and paste. But here I want something else. I want, for example, take away years and quarters, and instead I take model. Then I will get all the models. Of those, I will sort the largest to smallest, and then I will get the ones that sold the most. And in the left column, I right click and I choose filter and I choose top 10, but I actually don't want top 10. I instead want top 5. And now I'll get the list of the 5 most sold models during the whole entire time. I could also make another pivot table, and in this one I just want the total revenue, and then I'll take away everything else. So now I have 3 different pivot tables, and now it's time to add our slicer. I'll just click inside any of the pivot tables, and in pivot table analyze, I choose insert slicer, and I want in this case to have a slicer on phone brand. Okay, now I have my slicer. If I now click in one of the buttons inside this slicer, the first pivot table will filter on that brand. If I choose Google, I will only get the quantities of Google phones. If I choose Apple, I will only get the quantities of Apple phones. But as you might see, my choice here only affects the first pivot table. It does not affect which models that are the most sold. It does not affect the total revenue. To make that happen, I mark my slicer, and in the slicer menu above, I click Report Connections. And here I have a lot of connections because it's actually have all the pivot tables that I have in my Analyze tab as well. Here are the ones that we have created right now. So if I want this to affect all of them, I click like that. And now it will affect all 3 of my pivot tables. So I could actually configure which pivot tables each slicer should affect. If I want to format my slicer, I could do that under menu slicer, and here I could, for example, choose that I would like to have them in 5 columns. Then I could choose the size like this, just drag, I will have them like that instead. I could also choose some colors like that. In the same way as you could add a slicer connected to our pivot table, I could add a timeline. I go to pivot table analyze and insert timeline, and I want to take it on date. This I will do some formatting on as well by choosing quarter. I will make it longer, and I will scroll. So now I see all the quarters. I could actually do some formatting on that one as well, so they look quite like that. This first table, I would like to see the years and the quarters, all of them, all the time. I just want the quantity to change depending on other choices I do, for example, on phone brand and so on. But if I, in this table here, click for the first quarter, this will filter away everything but that quarter. And that will, of course, destroy that graph that I will do for this one. So to fix that, I have to do the same thing as we did for phone brands here. I mark timeline, and under timeline, I choose report connections. And in this case, I don't want it to affect my first pivot table. So I click that away. It will still affect my total revenue, my model list. The last thing we're going to look at is how to create graphs from pivot tables. I'll just move those slicers away a bit. And there is one problem in Excel, I would say, that is a little annoying. And if I click here, for example, and I make equal that model, and then in here, I take equal that quantity. If you see here, Excel by itself creates a quite special function. So it will still look okay at this time. But then if I, for example, change my slicer up here, it will not work. It will not find the correct cell. So to fix that, instead of doing equal to, I'll just choose the first one here, like that. And then here I mark the cells that I would like to fill something in. And then I click Control D and Control R. That will fill up my column and my row. And if I now look at the F cell here, I could actually see that it's B25 instead of that special function that was created if I just click equal to that cell. So now I will have a table like that, which will always reflect the table in here. If I choose 1+, that will change like that. So that's quite good. And now I could just make a graph out of that by inserting, for example, a pie chart like that or whatever I want. That, my friends, was basically what I was going to do in this video, because the dashboard itself, I have done a video on that already. So, and it's linked down below. So from on here, it's basically just creating the charts and the tables and fixing up your slicers, which I have shown in this video, and maybe the timeline, and then copying them into a dashboard so it looks good. But that you could see in another video that is linked below. So if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. That will help with the algorithm, and that would help me a lot. And I would love to do new videos. So thank you very much. See you soon again. Bye-bye.